Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ari, and today we're going to have some more stories about our toxic life. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video, if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further ado, let's go. Today's first story. In this story, Opie recounts the betrayal by his best friend, Tony, and his wife. Tony and the wife cheated during a wine tasting getaway. Devastated, the man confronts them, ending his friendship with Tony and leaving his wife. Despite receiving hate from friends and family, he moves on, finding solace in new relationships. He refuses to forgive their betrayal and rebuilds his life with trust and support from others. Now let's get into the story. A 38 male was best friends with a man named Tony since we were 8 years old. We basically became brothers and went through school telling people we were. After graduation, we got an apartment together, and he was the first one to meet my future wife. He was supportive and even vowed to protect both of us whenever we were with him. He wasn't afraid of getting sappy with me. We meant a lot to each other. Despite our closeness, though, Tony and I disagreed when it came to drinking alcohol. He drank daily, but kept it after work and on the weekends. I never saw him call off work or do anything irresponsible. For that reason, our friendship prevailed and I never brought up his drinking. After my wife and I married, I moved out of the apartment. She didn't drink as much as my best friend, but she did enjoy wine and wine tasting. After 8 years of marriage, Tony was very much a part of our lives. I trusted him wholeheartedly, so when my wife bought 2 tickets to a wine tasting getaway, with one overnight, I asked him to take her for me. I didn't necessarily like that my wife was into wine, but I wouldn't stop her from going to this peaceful place that she would enjoy. Since she was beautiful and smart, I didn't want her to go alone and encounter anyone that would try to take advantage of her. Tony was happy to go and promised me everything would go well with him there. Since my wife expected to drag me along, they only got one hotel room. She didn't bother to bring this up to either of us. The next thing I remember is showing up at the wine tasting as a romantic surprise for my wife. I tapped her on the shoulder and planted a kiss when she turned around. She smacked me. She was so surprised. I laughed about it, but as I laughed, I noticed the terror in both of their faces, like I wasn't supposed to be there. I started telling them that while I was working, I couldn't stop thinking about them, and it felt like it was important for me to join them. They looked absolutely sick, even though they were trying to smile and avoid looking at each other. Throughout the rest of the day's activities, my wife tried to seem normal, but she was anything but that. She would say completely random things and point out stuff that wasn't important in an attempt to fill the silence. My best friend, Tony, was eerily silent and kept apart from me. I elected to stay in wine country for another night, so we stayed in the same hotel room they cheated in. I did this specifically because of their behavior, and I wanted the truth. Since there were 2, I asked which beds they slept in, and they both started stammering. My wife excused herself and retreated to the bathroom. My best friend, Tony, couldn't contain the truth any longer. He started by telling me he couldn't stand the thought of failing to be my best friend. It was killing him to think he might never see me again. I pretended to be confused, but I already had a feeling they made a terrible, irresponsible mistake. He told me they were very drunk the night before because she'd been upset about me refusing to go. When they got back to the hotel room, she came out of the bathroom naked and started kissing him. He couldn't stop her, and then that's when he stopped talking. As calmly as I could, I asked him if they had intimate. He just swallowed hard, and no words came out. I punched him. It reminded me of when we used to horse around as kids, except this time he had intimate with my wife. I truly hated him. With him speechless and holding his face, I yelled through the bathroom door to my wife that I would never trust her again. I walked out of the hotel room, headed for my car. She screamed in protest and followed me to the parking lot, but I went home without her. Within 5 hours, Tony showed up at my door. I didn't know if my wife was hiding somewhere outside or in the car. He begged me to forgive him and swore he would never make this mistake again. I just said of course he wouldn't, because he was no longer my friend and wouldn't be meeting any future woman in my life. I yelled that after so many years, I thought he deserved my trust and was respectable enough not to sleep with her. He did the worst, most unforgivable thing he could have done. I accidentally spat on him. I was that worked up. I shut the door in his face because I couldn't believe a word he said. I told everyone what happened. Our friends and family were all the same people. Basically, no one could believe it. After receiving tons of hate from their friends and our family, Tony pretty much became a hermit. He didn't leave his apartment for a while and didn't have anyone to hang out with. My wife tried sending me provoking messages like it was my fault for failing to forgive them for this one mistake. She also tried to send messages for pity, calling herself names, and admitting she didn't deserve happiness. I didn't reply to anything. Even though they were both drinking, it was up to my wife to get another hotel room when she found out I wasn't coming. Or if they had any respect for me or self-control at all, they simply would have gone to bed and pretended the other person was sexless. They both failed me, and I wouldn't have them in my life anymore. I've since bonded with other friends and have been dating a wonderful woman. She understands the emotional torment I've gone through and only earns my trust daily. I have no reason not to trust her because it wasn't her that cheated on me. Today's second story. In this story, a married couple, living in a quiet neighborhood, find their lives disrupted when the husband discovers his wife's affair with their neighbor. He gathers evidence and plans to confront her at her birthday party. After revealing the affair to their guests, the wife is humiliated and blames her husband for the fallout. She now lives with her mother, isolated and remorseful. Now let's get into the story. My wife, 26 female, and I, 31 male, were married for 3 years when this story took place. We lived in a nice neighborhood that was almost too quiet. We hadn't even considered having children at this point, but in the back of my mind, I decided the neighborhood was safe enough for children to ride bikes or run around freely. My wife and I often went jogging early in the morning, and I remember the first time we saw a young man that lived 3 houses away from us. He was sitting on the front porch and looked pretty young for a homeowner. I assumed it was his first house, or that he lived with his parents. I waved to him like a friendly neighbor. He casually waved back, but his eyes were locked on my wife. He smiled and raised his eyebrows before turning away. I was annoyed, but we were wearing headphones and my wife didn't seem to notice she was being checked out. I let it go, but I didn't plan on inviting that guy to any barbecues. Later, I came home from work, parked in the driveway, and saw the very same guy walking across my front yard. I called him out and asked what he was doing. I could tell he was trying to decide whether he should turn around or not. He did and awkwardly said he didn't mean to trespass. He was just introducing himself to my wife because we'd never been properly introduced. We exchanged names and I was polite, even though I wanted him to feel like I was a little uneasy about him being there while I was at work. After I knew he was gone, I went inside to find my wife. She was setting the table for dinner, but she seemed kind of embarrassed. She just asked me if I was okay. I said yeah, confused, and asked her why. She said she just wanted to check because I was talking to the neighbor on our lawn. I asked her if he knocked on the door to introduce himself, and she responded saying yes and suggesting we invite him over for dinner or a cookout since he lives alone. I was surprised. She called him by his name, already knew he lived alone, and wanted me to invite him to her house. This wasn't exactly what I had in mind. Since I felt a little weird and knew his name, I decided to search for his online profile. It wasn't hard to find and neither was his linked Instagram account. I scrolled through into my horror, found a picture of him kissing my wife. It was a recent upload as if they were hanging out while I was at work. I couldn't believe it. There was no caption, but a lot of people commented asking who the woman was. He wouldn't tell them my wife was cheating on me with our neighbor. She was kissing him. How long have they known each other? I felt devastated. I took vows with this woman. My parents paid for our wedding. I needed to know why she was doing this, and if there was anything I could have done to prevent it. However, saner thoughts prevailed. I simply took a screenshot and decided not to confront my wife until her birthday party. I created a spy Instagram account to follow API Hope for more proof before exposing her in front of all her friends and family. This was the worst time in my life. I couldn't touch my wife, I couldn't tell her I knew about the affair, and I couldn't attack AP like I wanted to. I felt really alone and distraught. I tried to think about the future and how great it would be to fall in love again, but it was too soon and I had too much healing to do, so I was just stuck in this kind of purgatory for a while. I was shocked. My wife didn't even notice or ask me what was wrong. I planned to ruin the party by presenting her wrapped presents and divorce papers. The presents were going to be framed, poster size, prints of her and APS and Instagram photos. I hoped for more proof, but when I saw it, I was infuriated. I was at work when he uploaded another selfie with her. The next day, when they were at the creek, then the day before her birthday party, he uploaded a picture of her standing in his bedroom wearing one of his oversized t-shirts. Pulling up her panties, the caption read Ira, "The forbidden peach is always the tastiest," even though I had to bundle up my jacket and scream into it to keep myself from imploding. This was the proof I've been waiting for. With this evidence, she wouldn't get anything in the divorce and I could start my life over. I was thankful, betrayed, and heartbroken all at the same time. Now I knew she had sex with him. I wondered if it was the first time. I wondered how she was going to act around me. On the way home, I stopped at a print shop to have 6 poster-size photos and divorce papers printed. It was cheaper than I expected, so I'm pretty sure they gave me the divorce discount. When I got home, she was almost normal, except I noticed she didn't want to look at me too long. Like she feared I'd see through her facade. She got up the nerve to casually ask me if AP could come to her birthday party. Inside, I was screaming. I couldn't believe she could ask me that after having sex with him. She must have believed she was innocent until proven guilty, and I didn't give her any clues that she was on trial. I even surprised myself when I told her AP could come to her party. I just plastered on a fake smile and said the more the merrier. As she slept, I framed and wrapped the giant pictures. I also put X-Lax in the cupcakes I baked for the party at the party. AP stood towards the back of the room. It was awkward. Her family and friends didn't know why he was there, so they tried to create chit-chat. But he couldn't tell them the truth, obviously. So it became awkward really fast. Everyone had cupcakes first, then I insisted. My wife opened the divorce papers. When she saw what it was, she looked at me like her soul jumped out of her body. Then she looked at AP with her mouth hanging open. Her mom immediately asked what was wrong. I didn't let her respond or answer her questioning stare. I just handed her the next present. She opened it slowly, and when she saw it was a picture of her pulling up her panties, she fainted. Her guests let out a couple of screams, and 2 of her friends came to her side. I unwrapped the rest of the photo and turned it around for everyone to see. They guessed I said my wife was cheating on me with AP. They all looked at him while I opened the other wrapped posters. AP took off. Then my wife woke up and realized what was happening. She just whined and cried while her guests wondered what to do. Her best friend was so shocked and asked her if it was true and what was going on. After AP left, my wife tried to follow him, but he didn't stop for her in the parking lot. She was so embarrassed she couldn't face her mother or friends. She just started walking home and refused any rights from anyone. I drove beside her to talk, but she only blamed me for everything. Days later, she was at her mom's when she said it was my fault AP was costing her. I told her she had a lot of nerve to tell me that she was the cheater. I didn't care what she felt. Even if she wanted to apologize, it wouldn't mean anything to me. I told her I left the divorce papers on her mother's porch, and she cussed me out before I hung up. She was supposed to be my wife for life. If she didn't want to be that anymore, she should have had a serious conversation with me. No matter how hard it was, if she was that miserable or ready to split, I at least deserved an honest conversation. And if there was no issue in our marriage, then I didn't deserve her consideration. She only thought of herself and what she felt like doing. She's still living with her embarrassed and controlling mother. She doesn't have any friends or lovers.